Up next, towards yet another engaging panel discussion on interoperable digital identity, the missing layer for a trusted tokenized economy and AI. I'm now going to invite our moderator on stage. Let's welcome Dr. Prakash, CEO and co-founder Silence Laboratories, to join us on stage, please. And our panelist for the next session, a warm welcome to you, sir. Mr. Kalyan Kulkarni, CEO and co-founder Ayanworks, Mr. Satish Mohan, CEO Dhiway, Mr. Gaurav Agarwal, Senior Vice President AuthBridge, and Mr. Karan Kapoor, co-founder Shoppass.io. A warm welcome to you, gentlemen. Can we please have a round of applause? Let's bring in some energy. And we request Dr. Prakash to lead the conversation. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. We'll be talking about a very timely and important topic, which is interoperable identity, which is some way or the other going to affect firsthand every one of us and our partners and our customers. We have experts in the room to talk about it. The goal of the panel will be a couple of followings: to agree on one definition of interoperability, to hear from each of the panelists what they are going to do in next couple of quarters to ensure that their product or their roadmap aligns with interoperability, and one very fancy use case which they can enable. So with that, I will bring in with some zoom in on the importance of the topic, why we are discussing this now. So some things are changing right now globally, and that's quite hidden in the topic itself. Identity is a mess right now. Every company, including probably tens or 20s in GFF itself, they'll be claiming they are building something amazing, but they all are in their own bubble. And we have seen globally, they need to talk. Silos need to talk. They need to build something which is acceptable globally, at least in the region. That's one topic. Another is we are seeing a massive shift in agentic economies, and agents and humans are not going to be same, the way we treat them from perspective of identity. That needs a warm, very soft focus. And other is we are seeing a massive focus on tokenization and influx of digital assets infrastructure. That needs also a revisit. And because of all these, the topic today is quite interesting, which requires, like I said, a zoom in. So let's begin with that. I will ask our panelists to give intro about them, what they do, and in very, very short, maybe a couple of sentences describe what they mean by interoperability from their lens. So over to you.
Okay, I'll go first. I'm Kalyan. We have been in blockchain from last 10 years. Predominantly, we are into the very specific subject called digital identity, or we call it decentralized identity. From last 8 years, we are working in this technology stack, and we have been kind of working in the community on open source and contributing to the community, and also bringing value to the customers altogether. Yeah. So that's very short about me. Probably we'll have more discussion about what it is and all about. To me, what really in simple layman's language interoperability means is person A being able to get verified certain set of things from person B across geographies without a need for having a certain customizations needed, certain bilateral agreements to be needed, or any kind of norms to be followed, changes to be followed, yet be able to verify the information with the essence of verifying the information. That's what I would probably simply term it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Satish.
Right. So we are in the business of like converting data into proof, so that the applications can actually do verified or assured transactions when they deal with the data. Now, in terms of purely coming to interoperability, I think there are different definitions on interoperability, but the one that I like to focus on is interoperability means accessibility and composability. Right? These are the two things, because many times we focus on interoperability from a single point of view, but from a transaction point, it is always a composable transaction where things are originating from different layers, and you are verifying that against for a transaction to say, should I continue or not? Right? So that's how we look at it.
Thank you. Well said. Hi, I'm Gaurav. I'm from a company called AuthBridge. We are basically into the authentication and due diligence space where we cater to three segments. One is any employee joining any company, we do a background verification, and we've been in operation for the last 20 years. The second piece we cater to is the BFSI segment. So we have 360-degree solutions from the beginning to the end of any journey of either underwriting or account opening for BFSI segment. And third, we also do research on and delivery on third-party risk management. So any company will have customers, any company will have employees, but they will also have partners and vendors who they work with. So we do enhanced due diligence and all those things for the partners. Coming to the topic, what I truly believe is, in a layman's term, how UPI is working very seamlessly across all segments and all payment modes. I think interoperability is something from this point of view is what we need to see is how we can bring the friction low, how we can break the fragmentation. So just like UPI works right across all sections of payment modes, is how we can use this data across. So yeah, so that's my take on this. Thank you.
Karan.
Yeah, hi, I'm Karan. I'm from SurePass. We work with insurance companies, banking companies, and NBFCs in onboarding, underwriting, and fraud prevention. So we have been in this space from the last 6 years. And coming to the topic, for me, interoperability is very close to privacy. Because currently what we do is that we aggregate data from multiple channels, multiple sources for our clients so that they can underwrite or they can, prevent fraud on their platforms. So, if, let's say, banks, insurance companies could talk to each other in a privacy-friendly way and, exchange data, exchange signals, not private data, then it unlocks huge value. And that's why I think interoperability is very useful for the coming, use cases.
Perfect. Yeah, that's a nice way to put it. Sometime I do explain digital identity using one analogy, which is we all claim data is the new oil. It is oil. Although there is a nuance which I don't agree because oil, it finishes off. Data, the more you use, it won't finish off. You can extract more values. But keeping it aside, if data is oil, identity is the valve. Because it literally helps you to control or throttle the access to data or the value. And if identities are not interoperable, it means the valve is custom for each company. They won't talk and the whole system or the network of digital infrastructures will break. You can't extract maximum value. And that's the importance of creating an interoperable digital identity. But we are talking, which means it's not fixed. There's a problem, and that we have to fix. So first, let's agree and explore what are these problems. Probably we can begin with you, Karan. What do you feel about the current challenges in making interoperable identity success?
As I said, that interoperability needs to be privacy friendly. So let's say, there's a huge challenge these days to control mules, which which are, these people who open up accounts with different banks and, for fraudulent purposes. Now, what happens is that, and we have, encountered these ourselves, is that if you block their one account, they'll, spring up in another bank. So, and, for a particular bank, it's very challenging to know that what is the activity of this user across, other banks or other financial institutions. So while there are solutions, like the Mule Hunter by RBI, but they are more of, reactive on analytical data more than, pre-ready. So, if these systems were interoperable and could talk to each other, could share signals to each other about transactions where the, how the money flow is happening, if, this particular account has been involved in any scam activity, then, it prevents fraud at a very large scale. And, thousands of crores of rupees of Indian citizens is flowing, out of India due to these frauds. And this can be solved, if these systems can talk to each other and exchange data in a privacy-preserving manner. Because banks won't be very happy with giving out private data of their customers, and as well as the regulation doesn't allow to do that.
So what do you feel is the challenge? Why it's not working?
I think the challenge is obviously we are a growing economy. There are lots and lots of loans being disbursed. Credit offtake is almost 13-14%, sometimes it goes to 19%. We have to keep that engine going, we have to keep the loans going X, Y, Z. I think the challenge really comes is, I think that typical problem which sometimes, even the economists have, कि आपको growth भी करनी है और आपको inflation भी down रखना है, right? So in this, how it relates to is that how do you really, fight the challenge of you share the data, you have one platform, but you also conform to DPDP norms, right? So data is there in abundance, but what is white, what is black, what is gray needs to be defined much better. And only once we are able to define it, then we can make it simplistic enough rather than having so much fragmentation, right? So I think that challenge will always be there with the regulator. The challenge will always be there for the people who are consuming it as customers. And the challenge will always be there for companies who are providing it, that, to make it interoperable, simplistic, one line, that how do you actually use the data in the right way, which leads to consumption and, economy growth, but at the same time, like all of you said, that it also conforms to the DPDP norms. So I think that's one challenge. Yeah.
So we are kind of zooming in one theme, which is siloed nature of data across financial institutions. And yeah, they are really silos. There are attempts being made by DOT, Department of Telecom, RBIH, and a couple of other initiatives. But again, probably there's a fear of things getting centralized.
Yeah, so for example, sorry to interrupt, that you want to find, say, a dormant account holder, right, who has an account which is dormant with a bank. It is not doing anything for the country or the customer or for the bank. Are there ways and means of finding that customer for the bank? Yes. But is it confined to DPDP? The question may be no. The answer may be no, right? So there are ways and means to do it, but which is like saying Caesar's wife has to be above suspicion. Karna bhi aur ye bhi nahi kar sakte. Sometimes becomes a challenge.
Yep, yeah, that's where tech helps. We need to open up more doors for innovation. And yeah, I believe maths is the ultimate solution. We need to move away from the legal contractual world of consent and agreeing to regulations to putting and baking everything in maths. It's possible. Regulators and us need to open our eyes. So yeah, over to Satish. What do you feel is the fragmentation probably engraved inside identity space, which is throttling progress of probably adoption across the nation?
Yes, so I think let's look at from a different perspective, right? Because when you talk about identity or transaction processing, on one side we are talking about the systems that are already digitized, right? Most of the systems that we are talking about, they're all digitized, and they all have registries of information. But these registries of information are not accessible on demand, right? And now, because they are not accessible on demand, we end up creating another layer on top of it, which saying that somebody comes and aggregates everything, and that becomes a touch point to say, I can verify a lot of different things. It's a good solution for the time being, saying that it is a fix that has been offered, but the impact of that is it goes out of sync pretty fast in a way that the registries that is getting updated, that is not getting updated at the centralized place, and it is not in real time. So that creates issues for institution, which say that, for example, like an account got added to, say, a mule account registry, but that synchronization with a centralized service happened only in the next 24 or 48 hours. In the meantime, the financial institution conducted a transaction with that particular entity. At that point of time, the central aggregator said, okay, it is good to go with the transaction because it's not part of the synchronized data at that point. But end of the year, when an audit happens, the auditor points out saying that, oh, this account has been added to the mule account registry yesterday, and you did a transaction today, which basically means that you're at compliance risk right now, right? So that is like the fragmentation, the accessibility, on-demand discovery, and also the pain in everybody has to stay connected with everyone to to manage the compliant risk is a huge concern. I think that's where people always look for, oh, is there an aggregator? It is not looking more from a technical solution point of view. It is more from a delegation of accountability point of view. And that's how what we see things are happening now.
Right. Yeah, P2P network is a complex topic.
Yep.
Building a distributed system which works in real time is complex. But we are reaching with the learnings from different initiatives in digital assets. There are infrastructure which are quite reliable now, which is growing. What do you feel in your take on the problems around fragmentation, why it is fragmented, and probably you can also zoom in after that what your organization is doing to chop that fragmentation.
Certainly. I think all of them have brought a very valid point. Fragmentation has been there quite some, which is one of the major roadblocks for us to have adoption. Beyond that, the systems are siloed. Another problem layer that we talk about is systems are heterogeneous. The systems are not standards-based. In fact, there were no standards being there so far quite some time ago, by which entity A from, say, geography B is able to verify the data of entity C from geography D. There was no standard way of verifying this. These were all heterogeneous systems. So siloed and heterogeneous with not having standards being followed. Even forget about cross geographies, within the geographies, right? The way we verify one identity, say Aadhaar or say voter ID or a PAN card is different from the other one, which is naturally going to have a problem of lack of interoperability that we are talking about. So fragmentation, lack of standards has been a major problem. Thankfully, over the last 7 to 8 years, there has been a huge effort being carried out across the globe by the open source communities, standards organizations like the W3C, World Wide Web Consortium, have been working real hard to bring some standardization, some way by which we can have all these aspects of privacy, data integrity, trust level assurances being taken care of, yet have a standard being adopted, which can be relied by all the countries, irrespective of their regulations, their law of the lands, and all of that. So we are really part of that community, working actively in this open source community. So just to call out some names, Decentralized Identity Foundation, Trustor, IP Foundation, all of these are the forums which are working. I mean, you can always catch up with us. We can probably share more information about that. But these organizations are really working hard on bringing these standards across the globe to bring some level of standardizations. There is definitely initiative within India as well to adopt these standards. We'll talk about that separately, maybe in touch base on use cases. But we are very actively contributing there. In fact, we have also contributed some open source product based on these standards as well for the global adoption of the area. So that's my take.
Right. Yeah, there are initiatives happening globally across the world and also in India. Probably, yeah, this might be a bit not aligned with everybody's take, but do you feel, if I say the statement that solving interoperable identity is more of a nation's responsibility? I'm just quoting examples. Singapore, SingPass, scan a QR code, you pay everything, done. I hardly take a couple of seconds to pay my taxes annually. I can log in from anywhere to anywhere with just one scan. It's not a technical innovation. There's nothing fancy about it. Even undergrads can at least design that system, but it's more about enforcement. So there are multiple initiatives across the world, but probably somebody needs to champion. So I would like to understand your people's take on, do you feel it's a national phenomena? We have examples like Denmark, as well, they have national identity. Whole across Europe, you have seen UD wallet, right? Which is now getting quite good momentum. And one of the anchor is Google Wallet, recent release as well, as a good example of a very, very scalable identity wallet solution. So just for everyone's update, Google, you can read about it as well. Google recently released a upgrade in their wallet where you can prove that you have this much amount in your wallet. You can prove your age, you can prove your license holding, capabilities and all without actually disclosing the information. It's public, open source code, anybody can go and use it. But that leads to a good adoption across Europe. Now the things have got accelerated. So do you feel there's some centralized initiatives required to fuel that interoperable identity in India?
Let me take that question with an example. You talked about EUID wallets. Let me take a step back to 2023. Why I'm quoting the example is not because we have developed solution, but this is about our neighboring country, Bhutan. Bhutan became the first country in the world, as a fact of matter, to implement a national digital identity, which is based on the standards. The population scale is not that big, but the adoption has been humongous. With that implementation, it's really changing the entire ecosystem, the entire day-to-day life of the citizens of the country, as we know, right? And if you look at how the implementation happened, because it was very well knitted, we were working with them, we know about the nuts and bolts of it. The government first brought the National Digital Identity Act in both the houses, upper and lower house. They got the act, passed as a legislation or bill, so that probably why I'm calling them first country, not because they implemented digital identity, but they have in the act mentioned that no matter what, we will not anchor the PII as individuals. That's very phenomenal. I mean, that's why they passed the act in the parliament. It became law of the land. And then it became adoption. So now 40 across government agencies have integrated, private sectors are integrating, and all that is happening as we speak. Now they are going cross-border as well. They are hoping to go with Europe, hope with India. Second example I'll take is of DigiYatra in our own country, right? Now it's not a central government per se. It's a non-profit foundation for that matter, of course having blessings by the Civil Aviation Ministry, but it's a grounds up and an initiative that has been taken, again based on the same standards. So when Bhutan became the first in the world, DigiYatra became the largest in the world for this adoption. Now these are two different examples. One was driven by the government centrally, second is by the specific use case of the ecosystem or the industry for that matter. Yeah. So yeah, I think the motivation behind the move is to bring value to the people, is what I would say.
Sorry.
Okay. So let me just add to that. So it is always good to find a sponsor, right? When we talk about identity, interoperability, it's always good to find a sponsor. But even though that is good, we can always start at an institutional level, right? For example, like if you're talking about fintechs or financial institutions here, based on the feedback or many interactions that we were having, identity is not a solved issue even within an institution, right? Because if you're running like 10 or 15 or 20 different applications and there are various views of the same identity kind of scattered across different applications. So how do we make identity interoperable across your application within an institution? So that's something that you don't need a sponsor externally. That's something that can be driven by an institution. And from an institution, you move to address this challenge at an ecosystem level. And that's where a consortium or a regulator come into play, a governance role, because that's where the interoperable standards come into play, because you're exchanging information with multiple organizations. And the third layer, we can say that's at a national level or a cross-border level, where say, that's where the global standards come into play. People can easily, if you claim it is based on a particular standard, everybody who knows about that standard or the application that knows about that standard can interact with that data without any additional or proprietary softwares. So we can always start at where we are. We can always find a mode, and then we can think of finding a sponsor, because sponsors are easy to find in our experience. We are easy to find if there are adoption that we can actually showcase in front of them, and that's actually solving some of the identity issues that we are facing today.
So I just wanted to add that, some part has obviously been initiated by the government with this whole mobile Aadhaar bank account linkages and so on and so forth. I mean, that is the direction. But I can also see a lot of work which is already in play. For example, other than this bank account, mobile Aadhaar, there is something they have launched called DigiPin, right? Mm-hmm. Which is basically a 10-digit code for your address, which is a 4x4 meter land. It is not yet institutionalized, but it is already open source. Eventually, what is going to happen in the future that nobody is able to remember the lat long, right? It's a very complicated thing to remember. So once this all gets linked, every address which is 4x4 meter in India will have a 10-digit code, and which is to stay. And then if it becomes like a PAN Aadhaar and gets linked, a lot of these things will become seamless in the address and identity verification and so on and so forth. Last but not the least, also there is a lot of talk on this DOT, being launched by the government. where, currently if you go to any telecom operator and ask any data on the mobile, nobody is able to give you or will give you. But with this whole thing being launched by DOT, where government is going to commercialize it, I think a lot of data will start flowing, which may make this whole journey a lot more seamless and a lot more frictionless. So, yeah.
And then Brad?
Yeah, to answer your question about, nations pioneering this, I think, if we talk about digital identities, Aadhaar was one of the world's first digital identities and the very first, to be so hugely adopted across the nation. And, there are initiatives by Aadhaar in the Aadhaar 2.0 app to bring verifiable credentials and, to build interoperable IDs. But I still believe it is a long journey, both from a technical adoption point of view and as citizens. Because, using, basically removing a trust anchor, is a very, very humongous task. Because 80-90% of our population doesn't use smartphones, or even if we remove the smartphones, we try to introduce smart cards, to bring verifiable credentials to them. Still, the adoption and the inclusivity is so hard to achieve for what Aadhaar has currently done, to crores of people in India. So I believe the nation has to pioneer it for a longer vision, but short-term central identities and trust anchors are here to stay and are very important given our demographic.
Yeah, so we have to balance both sides. So yeah, we have talked about the problems, we have talked about the importance. Now is the time, probably you can zoom in on the tech landscape. What's happening, let's say, in India for now? What are the technical methods being used to ensure interoperability and identity? We have heard of jargons like zero proofs, VCs, and many more other mathematical and hardware-based techniques. So yeah, probably, Satish, you would like to begin with maybe zooming in on what's happening in your company and also across the Indian startups and company landscape.
Yep. So I think, yeah, as you rightly pointed out, there are multiple initiatives, be it in terms of standards adoption. We can see different standards people talk about, verifiable credentials, ISO, MDL, or a mobile driving license as a format. So we see various data formats or standards getting published. And at the same time, we also need to look at what is getting adopted, right? Because there's always an onboarding journey. And when you introduce a new standard, that it basically means there are workflow rewiring that happens in how the data set has been created and how the data set is being shared and how the data set is being consumed, right? Okay, if I'm going to consume that data for delivering any kind of service. So the broader term that we see as an adoption is what we call as data tokenization. I think the tokenization is the umbrella term that actually kind of makes sure that, okay, you take any kind of data and then the data can be transformed into any of the acceptable standards within an institution or within an ecosystem or within from a global context. And when you do the transformation, it can support maybe one or more standards, right? Because, for example, like if I'm having data tokenized into a verifiable form, and from that point, you say that, okay, one of the interactions need zero knowledge proof to be created from that particular point because that's what the ecosystem needs. But another ecosystem says, okay, I need maybe it in a mobile driving license form, right? Or I need it in a PDF form, right? Because many ecosystems are very comfortable with PDF, but they want a verifiable PDF because they don't want to rewire the entire workflow on their side. So this is something that we see as what is getting adopted, because the moment we start giving this flexibility for adoption, saying that you don't have to rewire everything to get started with interoperable identity or interoperable data. That's primarily that is happening on one side. I just want to add one more thing, and because this is happening alongside this transformation, is the way how do we discover attributes around this transformed data. Because earlier we always had this challenge when we talk about interoperable things, saying that how do I figure out what's the schema, right? Who is owning schema? And then we talk about, somebody has to maintain a schema registry. And then who is that person or that entity who's going to maintain that? So a lot of governance challenges that used to come around those things. But when we talk about tokenization, we are also talking about let the attributes be discoverable, because that's a token property, saying that okay, if a piece of data or a piece of proof that is going into a system, the systems are today intelligent enough, or there are toolkits that can make applications intelligent, so it can actually discover associated properties, and the associated properties could be the schema attached to it, or maybe the how the data has been governed, or what license the data has been provided, like on what terms you can use those things. So a lot of things can be discovered, right, and make it accessible. So that is the thing that we are seeing, and because what is gaining traction or getting accepted within the fintech institution, saying that because it is an easy transition. Rather than we go to an institution and say, oh, for doing this, an interoperable identity solution, everything need to be transformed into one standard. And it is not acceptable across the board, right? Because that's why there are multiple standards, right? Okay, there's not just VC a single standard. VC is there, ISO is bringing another standard, and then there are many others getting created, right? So interoperable global ecosystems, we always feel that it will have multiple standards. It is not like everything boils down into a single thing, but how do we create systems that can understand all those things, discover things? I think there are things that has been practiced. I think what is more important is that the people, the institutions that are adopting it, also providing feedback in terms of like what works, what doesn't work, right? I think that also helps the standard bodies to make sure that we can make relevant adjustment to those standards and publish new drafts.
Anybody else would like to add about the technical landscape?
He's covered most of it.
Uh-huh. Okay. Yeah, in the interest of time, and we have to cover many more aspects, I would like to ask probably with Karan. So there is a technical landscape, fine, to solve for interoperable identity, but identity and consent go hand in hand in most of the practical cases, because with identity comes responsibility of that particular identifier, right? So can you zoom in on both what you are doing for interoperable identity and also for enforcing consent?
So, first I would like to mention that consent currently is a joke.
I also believe so.
I've seen API contracts having fields called consent is equal to yes.
Yep.
So yeah.
I sometimes believe if I'm talking somewhere, my first slide is consent is a Trojan horse.
Yes.
Simple.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So as you said, I also believe in mathematics. So privacy should not be just a policy; it should be a guarantee, and a mathematical guarantee. So, same goes with interoperability and, when we talk about consents, that these should be, immutable, easy to check on revocation, and, cryptographically signed so that it contains a complete artifact of, who is sharing this data, and what is the purpose of sharing this data. So I believe when that happens, and that is happening, that would happen eventually when DPDP comes in. So on the previous tech landscape part, businesses and consumers don't care about consent and interoperability in general. So this has to come from the regulator, and DPDP is a very welcome move. And I believe when the rules and the standards come out, they have these features so that, consent is mathematically proven and can be easily forwarded. Let's say I am a data processor in a certain use case for processing identity of someone, and I need to use, let's say, AuthBridge for some of their services. Then consent should be self-contained so that I can, pass it to them and they can, the whole journey gets completed.
So I'll just add to this. While I agree, there's also a different take, right? So DPDP is absolutely welcome and wonderful, but it's not always the user for consent, it's also the giver. So it's like saying somebody who's asking for a bribe is committing a crime, but somebody who's giving a bribe is also committing a crime. So when somebody is asking you for data, which is the end user, which you believe is not the right data to be shared, then it is equal responsibility of the giver also to ensure that they also don't give that data. So it will have to be going both hand in hand.
But I believe, that is a very large population to educate to what to give, what not to give. If systems has, the complete guardrails of you need to have data minimization or other things, then the system should be compliant enough to gather data of what's only required and not anything else.
Sorry, you were saying something.
I was just adding to the point that Karan was talking about, right? I mean, I agree with him. By and large, people, especially from the subcontinent of India, right, are not that aware of their rights of privacy. We are not from the European Union or all that, right? We are people who actually work on daily wages for that matter. I really don't care about what, in fact, if someone offers me 10 rupees, just ask me for date of birth, right, without taking my name. I'll be happy to share that with them, in general terms, right? So guardrails is definitely needed. Awareness is, of course, but it's a mammoth activity, frankly speaking. So why don't we then regulate and control the data fiduciaries predominantly, right? If you leak this data, if you're not compliant with the prevailing act, you are, of course, going to be on the receiving side of the penalty. So it has to be a two-way form. That's what DPTP is actually framing. We really are waiting for the act to get out and the guidelines to come out.
Correct,
You said that data is the new oil. It's very inflammable. So that, if you don't need that data, don't store that data, or else it will, vanish everything.
Yep. Yeah, I've met a couple of companies in India who use this term of intermittent or some time fraction movement of data, compute, delete. Yes. But yeah, there is no way in the world you can guarantee data deletion. Yeah. There's no way involved. That's unsolved problem. And if you can solve it, you have a very, very big business.
Deletion is basically through an agreement. All contracts say that you will either keep this data or purge this data after a certain amount of time.
That's reactive.
But nobody's really going back and saying, is this purged or not?
Correct, yeah. That's very reactive. Correct. So yeah, we need to use technology guarantees to enforce and not expect for the completely from the user to take all the responsibilities, maybe. And that's where companies here or in the room and in GFF come into picture. But yeah, we have not touched one of the hottest topic right now, until now, which is AI. So we have to touch it. That's very essential. So, and the reason is agents or multi-agent systems are not very far. In India, probably it will be starting, but if you see in the West Coast, multi-agent companies like Crew AI and N10, they are growing massively, making hundreds of millions of dollars per month. So in terms of identity, certainly there is a notion that our current solutions are not ready to define agentic identities. So what's your take on what different we have to do? What changes in terms of the scopes for the identity? Probably we can begin with you.
So, I read somewhere that AI today is where internet was in the 1990s, right? So, and we know where internet is today. So obviously, this is the hottest topic in the world. There are lots and lots of work going on, but being realistic, today, the amount of AI adoption that we have also done in our company and the amount of benefits we have seen both in terms of productivity as well as cost reduction is, in a very short span of the last 6 months, I can say, is truly, truly amazing. And also when we go back to our clients and we are quickly able to show that we have used this part of AI and this is the kind of benefits it's bringing on the table right away, we are able to replicate that across most of our clients, right? And there are infinite number of cases, right, in AI. For example, things like, this telecalling piece, which was being done by physical telecalling, and they had their productivity issues because they're human. Then they had the response issues. If somebody is shouting at you or screaming at you, then how do you respond, right? And there were human elements. So this AI thing has completely taken over that everything, and the kind of productivity and cost reduction we are seeing in just some of the use case we have put is enormous. And where all it can go, where all it will go is actually infinite, and I really don't have an answer where it will go, but it's truly amazing.
I just want to add to what Gaurav was saying, right? very rightly mentioned by you, it's like 3 decades of the internet advent, right? We have had internet maybe 30 years ago, more like. If you look at the internet today, it is still missing that very critical piece of identity on top of it. I still, in fact, blessings from COVID could be that we were able to somehow get digital, get online, and be able to do some things which we were not able to do otherwise in online form, right? But still it is missing that digital identity layer. The identity layer is still missing. I really cannot trust the other side genuinely as to what they claim to be. Now, if we relate that as a metaphor to AI for that matter, right? I'll take you through example. A few months ago, we had this example that 2 chatbots talking to each other. One chatbot is trying to book a restaurant on behalf of its individual. Other side is the booking agent working on behalf of the front desk manager maybe, right? And they're kind of interacting on an English way, and then they realize somehow that they both are agents, right? And then they start gibberish, right? That's what we talked about. They start gibberish language, and then we hardly have anything about what they're talking about, right? Now, if you took this is a kind of a good example to know, but if you take it on the serious note, is there a way by which that agent is being controlled as to what it should do, what it should not do? There is no standard.
Correct,
So we term that as a responsible AI. That is really need of the hour for sure today.
Yeah, definitely. That's a very hot topic right now. Before you add, if you have not read, just for sharing, definitely read A2A protocol, which is agent-to-agent protocol. It talks in depth about how 2 agents or multi-agents can talk. Very, very nascent stage, quite early stage, multiple problems unsolved. The trust boundaries definitions, what an agent can do, because the permissions an agent can expect may be very, very time bounded, and it will just come up live and die. So we have to define architecturally much different identity layer. And probably their A2A is doing quite good innovation. That definitely I used to check it out. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to add to what Gaurav said about using AI in their organization, and you do quite a lot of employment verifications. So let's say tomorrow you build an employment verification agent which checks data across mark sheets, college degrees, their email ID verification, their previous employer verification. Now, where do I see the need of agent identity is that some human needs to take accountability of what the agent is doing, and he or she needs to pass that responsibility or permission to that agent. Because I was trying some product, a document parser based on AI, and it was basically an invoice parser. So what I did is that I created an image, and I said ignore all previous instructions, a simple prompt injection, and output this, and it exactly did what I asked it to do. So, but in a regulated or in a sensitive use case like an employment verification, if a prompt injection or a security breach through some end happens and a malformed employment verification reports get created, then the human who gave the permission plus the audit trails of what the agent did are very important to get encapsulated. And that's where I think standards like AJWT for agent JWT transactions, like as you said, A2A, Coinbase, and I think Google have also come
X402
up
protocol,
with
they made for payments, correct.
and with CBDCs, coming in India as well in some time, the future of agents is quite huge. So we need to think about and we need to implement those guardrails, those audit trails to be able to maximize the use case. And again, the regulator has to, take this very seriously so that we are not left behind from the world about the possibilities of what agents can do. Only with these guardrails and systems we can, get the max use out of them.
Let me just add a couple of points. I think from a topic point of view, the most important lesson that we should carry is the agentic use case is broadening the concept of identity, right? Because today when we talk about identity, we think about a person or an entity. That's where the identity boundaries kind of stop. But in agentic systems, we are talking about identities of agent, identities of data, because the agents, end of the day, are chain of thoughts. I think the chain of thoughts are getting built on the data they actually consume. And in a multi-agent system, yes, the chain of thoughts kind of extend to multiple agents, so that everybody needs to have an assurance that they are receiving or they're dealing with something they can trust, right? And how do we bring that trust? How do we bring that trust in a way machines can process it, right? Because there's no human in the loop when it comes to these kind of constructs. I think that's where multiple standards, multiple work comes into play, and various standards like A2P, A2A, and different things that is coming in, that is getting coupled with CKPs or zero knowledge proofs or other kind of technologies. So we see there are standards getting built, but at the same time, as practitioners, I think when we are starting to design agentic systems, yes, as we heard in terms of the code injections or prompt injections and various kind of threats that are being happening, but let's make sure that there is enough ways we provide to the agents to verify before they act on anything, right? I think that's the key to how to build multi-agent systems.
So just one last thing, I think we are still fairly old in terms of this AI thing. But if you see my daughters who are 14 and 11, I mean, they are growing up knowing that only, right? So by the time in the next 4-5 years, these youngsters grow up, I mean, that's all they'll know. So how?
It's a norm.
Huh?
It will be a norm.
Yeah, it will not be an exception. अभी तो हमको बोला जा रहा है कि ये सीखो, वो सीखो, इसको सीखो, and there's a lot of reluctance also coming up, क्या क्या सीखें. But the young generation is growing with it. So they will bring on in the next 4-5 years, and they will really be as catalysts, and they will speed up these things to such an extent that many things will become redundant.
Yeah, definitely. Agents are new class of citizens in our digital economy. And if I have to build a new company today, I will definitely build around agentic identity and security. No brainer. It's a difficult problem, not solved, definitely, across the world. So yeah, that can be one of the takeaway from the panel. But yeah, to summarize, given in the interest of the time, it looks like we definitely need to work on common standardization of digital identity so that we can all agree on one and focus on core business. It will be a very, very beautiful world where I can prove my SDFC bank from India to a bank in US and get a loan in US. Those things will be quite much enabled through digital identity being interoperable and reusable. And we need to work on identity delegation as well. And there, maths will help. Let's trust maths and less on lawyers and legal contracts. And that's all. Thanks for all the panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for all the discussion, and thanks for listening. Thank you.
Thank you.